Hello, welcome back to the Django x World of Warcraft tutorial. From our last episode, we have created our Blizzard client and we were able to get our character information from Blizzard's API. In this episode, we're going to try to connect our application with SimulationCraft and see if we can run some simulation score for our characters. So let's get into it. First of all, we do want to use Docker for SimulationCraft alone because, as you can see, fortunately they have a SimulationCraft Docker image with their net builds, so it gets constantly updated. So all we need to do is pull the image and run it. This was so hard back in the days when I first built this project and there's no Docker. I had to pull their source code and build it every night to get latest updates. So now this will vary a little depending on how you're currently running this project. If you're following this tutorial fully and you have all the Docker Compose file and Docker image ready and running locally, you can just straight follow with this tutorial. But if you're running this application natively, you do need to install Docker, make sure it's available, and you can skip some of the steps, which I'll mention in this episode. So let's get into it. First of all, we need to have access to the Docker CLI within our image. So let's add them. We need to add them in both of our Docker files. So let's say install Docker CLI. And this will ensure that Docker is running every time when we start the container. And we copy that into our prod image. Okay, this is the step that varies a little. You cannot fully skip this step because essentially if you're running this application natively, you want to have Docker available or Docker CLI. So you want to do this to your local environment. Maybe it's not APK management. So depending on the environment you're running, you might need to do some research and get Docker installed. Okay, so now we need to modify our compose file. This is a technique that allows the Docker host system to share Docker server with the subsystem. In this case, our application container will have access to our host Docker server, so it can then run nested containers. So this is how you do it. In the volume, it's actually pretty straightforward. You basically just mount the Docker sub file into the subsystem and give it read and write access. So now we copy that, put that in the production compose file as well. Okay, so now inside our container, we should be able to do Docker commands like Docker PS. So let's try it out. Docker is running, so and let's do Docker PS. So now you can see it's not only running Docker, but it's also seeing the containers that's actually on the host system. So in theory, we should be able to run SimulationCraft now from here. So let's try it out. First of all, the image is copy that. And we basically do Docker run, copy that, and I think you can just say armory equals, so in our case, EU, gas, E. Let's see. Okay, looks like it's working. So it not only pull the Docker image, it actually run the container and get us some output. Although it's a little hard to parse right now, but you can clearly see it's like the rotations, priorities, etc. I pulled the character, I had a DPS simulation score, so this is all good, all right? So now everything is ready. We want to start writing our first management command. So management command from Django is a feature where it allows you to have access to all the Django stuff, specifically the ORM models to access the database, but also not in a traditional web server style. You can actually get into the pod and run it kind of like a script. So it's a convenient way to have basically a Django script that's automatically connected to whatever your settings is. In our case, we want this to be a scheduled task that we want to trigger it in some interval. Management command really makes it simple because all you need to do is run a command. It runs a sequence of functions for you. You'll see how this works, and let's get into it. First thing first, let's close out these compose files. We need the management command folder because that's the only thing Django recognizes, so it's called management, and subfolder called commands. And of course, we need our init files in both management and commands folder. Cool. And now creating our command, let's call it refresh characters. So we need the base command from Django, so it's gonna be Django. And it starts with a command class. And let's put a help string here, just explaining what this job does. So it'll be okay, and it needs a handle function. Okay, so now this is where we actually run our code. So I believe in the models file, we have this get equipment checksum function on each character. So we can look through all the characters, run this, and get their equipment checksum. Okay, so we need to import our models. That'll be from and we're gonna get the new checksum. And if it doesn't equal to the checksum that the character already has, this is where we want to run the simulation. So first step, we run a new simulation. So we already know that the syntax is something like docker run with some parameters. So this is where we need the subprocess call function. That's from subprocess. So it'll be, I believe it's a list of strings with the commands and arguments. So it'll be something like docker run SimulationCraft. That's gonna be our image, and the armory is gonna be a assembled string. So that'll be region run name. Okay, so this command should run the SimulationCraft on our character and give us a report that looks similar to this one. We'll worry about retrieving the DPS score out from this report later. Let's just see if this command is set up correctly. Okay, so let's try this command for now. So manage.py refresh characters. Oh, sorry, had a typo. And of course, if you want to see some output from running this command, you do need to make sure you have at least one character in your database. So if you have followed my previous tutorial, you can go to the Django admin, create your own character, or just pick a random character to track. This should give you some report. Name equals value. Oh yeah, so this needs to be armory equals those things. Okay, try again. Cool, looks like it's working. So now we're running a simulation for the character we have, and we're getting the same output. Okay, so that's awesome. So now we need to worry about how to get this information available into our program, because right now it's just a very human readable report. So first, we want to attach an additional argument that's called report details equals 0. Because in our application or our use case, we don't care a lot of this stuff. We just need the very DPS score for this character. So we are getting the details down to 0. And we can make it a JSON format by giving it a JSON argument. So let's put it under temp. So we'll call it sync result. Okay, so now here's the tricky part. Because we're running this command with Docker, so it essentially starts a container within our container. And it only stores the result file within this container. And we need this report to be accessible in our Django application, which means this has to share the volume as our parent container. So in order to do that, we need to mount an additional volume for the temp file. So that'll be temp sync. Yeah, and the same applies to the production compose file. So in this volume, that'll be that. And when running this Docker command, we also need to mount the new volumes. So that'll be -v and the volume path, which is temp sync. Okay, so now this result JSON file will be our output. So let's open the file and parse it out. It'll be in JSON format, so we'll just load it as a whole JSON blob. So JSON equals JSON load report. And we, of course, need to import JSON. And let's just print the JSON for now, just to see what attributes we have, so we can decide what is useful for us. And we do need to restore the containers because we added the new volumes. So let's do it down first. Let's do it. Okay, so now we should have the new container up. Let's do Docker. Okay, so we just run this command again. And we should expect a JSON output. Okay, so it looks like everything is working. We are getting a JSON back. And if you dump this into a JSON parser, it'll be very easy to visualize what attributes you have and find what's meaningful or useful for you. But in our case, I've already done my research. I know what attributes I'm after. So we'll do DPS score. So this score is buried under scene players 0. Collected data. DPS, and we want the mean. Okay, so that's our DPS score. Let's print it just to be sure. Cool. So you see that's our DPS score in the end. At the moment, we don't have a way to track this DPS score, so we'll add a pseudo item here. Score. Okay, so now we've run the simulation. We know the character got refreshed, so now we need to update the checksum on the character. So this will be our step 2, update the checksum. Okay, so just for logging purposes, we're going to log both the old checksum and new checksum. So get the checksum out from the character. Cool. And let's print character checksum refreshed. And we'll print both the old checksum and the new one. And if the character remained the same on the checksum, we'll just do a print character not refreshed. Oh, we didn't have the checksum here, so we'll just do character equipment checksum. Okay, cool. Let's try it out. So the first time when we run this command, it will still run the simulation because the checksum last time we run it is empty and we never updated it. So first time, yep, so you see this character refreshed, got updated from now to this value. So now if we run it again, okay, so you see it's not refreshed and we're not seeing that big JSON output, meaning the SimulationCraft is not being run. So I think we're good. So in this episode, we have walked through the basics of Django management command, and with the help of the official SimulationCraft Docker image, we're able to very easily run SimulationCraft within our container and get our score. So in the next episode, we're going to solve this to-do item, find a way to store the DPS score. We're getting really close. So I hope you're excited. I hope you're having fun. See you in the next episode.